Ja, dann erstmal guten Abend, liebe Coaches. Schön, dass wieder so viele dabei sind. Für heute haben wir einen Coach dabei, der auf der Seite der Offense aktiv ist, Coach John Bond. Unter anderem Offense-Coordinator gewesen bei UMass, bei Georgia Tech, bei UT Martin und kann auf eine 30-jährige Laufbahn im Division One Level im Coaching zurückblicken. Und Coach Bond wird heute über Game Situations im Pre- und In-Season Football Practice sprechen, da ein paar Ideen vermitteln, was wir eigentlich so im Training noch machen können, wenn das Training irgendwann wieder losgeht. Und da würde ich einfach direkt Coach Bond überleiten. So, Coach Bond, it's your time. So we are excited to hear your talk, excited to learn from you. I got my pen and paper ready, so the stage is yours.
Well, I really appreciate being able to do this. I've always been fascinated with Germany and have been like a history buff forever. So one of my bucket list things is to be able to come over to Germany one day. Hopefully that can happen. But I really appreciate being able to talk about football and maybe being able to help possibly spread the game of football in Germany. And what I wanted to talk about today was situational football and making sure that we're covering situations that occur during the game and being able to practice that both in preseason camp and during the football season. And the first thing I wanted to talk about was third down, because as an offensive coach, there are a lot of different ways you can break up third down. A lot of guys break up third down in 1 to 3. You know, some guys have it 1 to 2. It's really kind of a preference. But for me, how I break down third down is I go third down and 1 as its own category. I go third down and 2 to 3. Then I go 4 to 6, which for me is medium. Third and 4 to 6 is medium. Then I go 7 to 8, and then 9 to 11, and then 12 plus. And the reason I do that, I think there's a huge difference in a third down and 1 call and a third down and 3 call. You know, a lot of guys lump those together. Well, in the NFL now, third and 3 is a pass. I mean, it's 95% pass in the NFL, and it's even gotten down to third and 2 is a passing down for a lot of people. And I never believed in that, and I never liked that. So I broke those categories up. And the same, you know, a lot of people have third down and 7 to 11. And I think a third down and 7 pass is totally different than than third down and 11. I think there's a big difference in that. So I ended up breaking those into their own categories. And for example, you take third and 1. Well, obviously for most people, that's going to be a run. And I believe that if you can't convert on third down and 1, you're probably don't deserve to win the game anyway. You probably don't. You're not good enough to win if you can't run for a first down on third down and 1. So for me, third down and 1 is a heavy run situation unless you're in 4 down territory, meaning you're on the plus end of the field and you can, if you don't get to third and 1, maybe you can get, come back on 4th down and get it. So those are my thoughts on that. And hey, if anybody has any questions, just go to the chat and I'll answer as many as I can. If I'm speaking too fast, if you don't understand what I'm saying, just let me know and I'll be glad to slow down. So anyway, third and 1 is its own category. Third and 2 to 3 now for me still becomes more heavy run, but with the possibility of a boot or a naked or, some sort of quick pass, 3-step route pass, and third down and 2 to 3. 4 to 6 for me is much more of a pass down. I'm very heavy 4 to 6, unless you have a run that you feel really good about, or a draw that you feel really good about. Third down and 4 to 6 is a heavy pass down. And the same thing with third and 7 to 8. And again, unless you're going to run a draw, for the most part, we're trying to throw the football to get the first down. You know, if you're really running the ball well and you're better than people physically, then sure, 4 to 6, 7 to 8, you know, you can call a run and feel decent about it. But for the most part, I've been, you know, I'm throwing the football. And then obviously 9 to 11. On third down and 7, you know, there's a pass you can throw to get to the first down markers, and that looks a lot different for me than third down and 11. So that's why I broke 7 to 8 and 9 to 11. You know, your 9 to 11s are your digs and your comebacks and your curls and things like that, where you can get past the sticks to get the first down. And then really for me, third down and 12 plus, the odds are not great by any stretch of imagination. So you're calling some pass that you have in your playbook to try to get to the sticks to get to that first down. But you want to practice all those situations. You want to put your team in all those situations in preseason camp. You want to physically practice third down and 1. Okay, what's your offensive coordinator's calls? Okay, third down and 2 to 3. What are the calls? You run inside zone, outside zone, power. I'm running a naked off of my inside or outside zone, and I've got one 3-step route that I like, whatever the case might be that you're practicing. Then you get to your third down and 4 to 6. You know, you're practicing those situations. And what are my best third down and 4 to 6? Am I running 5-yard ends? Am I running curl routes? Am I running hitches or slants or things that can get me the first down? Same thing right on through 7 to 8, 9 to 11. But you want to physically practice those situations to not only put your offense in those situations, but put your defense in preseason camp as well. So those are the first things. Those are obvious situations, but a lot of guys don't do a very good job of practicing these situations. And the more that you can implement them in your preseason camp and your preseason practices, the better off you're going to be. For example, in college, on Tuesday, we would put in the game plan, all our first and second down calls that we liked, all our formations, all our calls on first and second down. Wednesday was third down day. We practiced all our third down calls on Wednesday, or most of Wednesday. And we also would practice red zone on Wednesday. Then we would come back on Thursday, put the emphasis again on third down and red zone, because you spent the entire day Tuesday implementing first and second down. So you come back and hit your situational days Wednesday and Thursday, then you walk through it or light practice it on Friday and play on Saturday. So that's kind of what we did. A situation that always comes up that at some point in time during the game is, or a season, or when you're trying to win a championship, is, you know, practicing fourth down. You know, you need to practice your fourth down and 1, fourth down and 2 to 3. Practice those calls, because there may come a time when you need to win a championship and it's 4th and 2. What do you feel good about that can help you win the game? So those are things. That's another situation that you can practice during preseason camp, and really during the game week as well. You want to put your team in as many of these situations as you can. All right, something that I feel very strongly about is coming off your goal line. They've got a good kicker. You get pinned back. You're inside your 5-yard line. You know, you're down backed up to the -1. How are you going to play that? Are you going to run a quarterback sneak? Are you going to hand it off to a fullback if you have one? Are you going to gamble and take a shot and throw a deep one on first and 10 coming one, but you want to physically put your team in that situation coming out. What is your first play? Are you just going to, if you're on the 6-inch line, and we're just going to try to get the ball off the 6-inch line and try to get some breathing room, or are we going to take a shot, or how are we going to play that? And then you need to practice a series. All right, your first down, you're coming out at the 1. What are your 3 calls? You got 3 calls to get to the first down, because our goal, I always wanted 2 first downs. All right, I wanted to move the sticks enough to where not only could we punt and not be worried about our kicker being in the back of the end zone trying to get the ball out, we can actually get a little bit of breathing room and get the field position turn a little better. A lot of guys, their goal is 1 first down when they're backed up inside their 5-yard line. My goal was to try to get 2 first downs at least, to try to change the field position just a little bit and get a little breathing room. But practice, put that in your plan. Give me a series coming out. Your first team, they run their series. Your second team, they run their series. And then you always want to play third down on coming out. If you're still backed up, you didn't have any success on first or second down, and now you're 3rd and 10 from the -1, how are you going to play that? Are you just going to try to keep from turning the ball over and punt it out of there? Or are you going to try to go for the sticks and be a little bit more aggressive, gamble a little bit to try to get the first down? Those are situations that need to be practiced and thought about as coaches. So your third down, and what am I calling on third? Your same old situations: 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2 to 3, 3rd and 4 to 6, 7 to 8, 9 to 11, and 12 plus. What am I calling in those situations when I'm coming out? And then something that I fortunately have always been very good at is red zone offense. I feel like, I've been asked over the years, how are you so good in the red zone? Because every year it seems like we were at tops in the country in the red zone. And my answer was, well, if you can run the football and if you can throw a naked or bootleg off your top run, that you have, top 1 or 2 runs, and you have a good 3-step game, you're automatically good in the red zone right now. But you need to practice the red zone. You need to practice whatever your definition of the red zone is. For us, it was the 20-yard line. When you get to the 20, the field shrunk, and now that is what you're concerned with. You can tell, guys, based off your film breakdown, when you break down the opponents, there is a breaking point in a defensive coordinator's coverage for the most part. At least in college there is. When you get to a certain yard line, it might be the 10, it might be the 8, it might be the 5, it might be the 15, it might be wherever. But you can see when you're breaking your film down, you can see when a core defensive coordinator makes his change and is playing the coverage that he likes to play in the red zone and in the goal line. And that's when you make your plans accordingly. Once you get to that break point, for example, you're seeing all the coverages. There is no pattern. He's playing cover 2, he's playing cover 3, he's playing different covers. But once he gets to a certain yard line, it all becomes fairly consistent on what he's trying to do. He's either trying to blitz or he's trying to play coverage, is generally the way most guys go. And most guys do have a goal line coverage that they do like to play. And I do have a question here in the chat. It says, could I please mention that in Europe, teams usually don't have everyday practice and no second teams. Most teams, even the bigger programs, practice 2 or 3 times per week. You have any recommendations how often and when to implement situational periods in practice and how to split them up? Great question. If I have 2 days of practice, all right, a week, I'm going to spend 1 day strictly on first and second down, all the calls that you like, all the calls that you think you would be good in the game. I'm going to spend one day on first and second down because that's the majority of your time is in first or second down. The next practice, I'll start out for a few minutes on my first and second down calls, but then I'm going to get to third down. And even though third down is a lower percentage, you're only going to have 11 to 15 third down calls in a game, generally, give or take. Those are obviously big calls. Over here they say third down showdown. It's showdown down. You're trying to get the first down. It's important. So I'm going to spend a significant amount of time on my situations, whether it be third down or the red zone. Because honestly, the teams that win the most are the teams that score touchdowns in the red zone the most. It doesn't do you any good to most generally to be kicking field goals down there when you're leaving points off the board. So you need to split your practice up, knowing that first and second down is a bigger percentage of the game, but third down is a very important down, and red zone is a very important part of your practice time, and it needs to be practiced accordingly. Another aspect that I feel like you need, if you've only got 2 or 3 practices a week, you've got to practice your goal line plays. You have to have a goal line philosophy. Do you stay in the same offense once you get down inside the 5-yard line? Where do you define the goal line? All right. For me, I never went to goal line offense until I got to the 3-yard line. Once we got to the 3, then I would start thinking about getting in my goal line offense. A lot of guys will play the same offense all the way down the field. A lot of guys will have a special package where they have some bigger guys, some stronger guys, where they can feel like they can muscle you up a little bit and be able to run the ball in the end zone that way. But for me, when I got to the 3-yard line is when I started thinking about going to my heavier packages. I think anything further out in this day and time is too far. I think defenses have come too far. I think they've got too many guys hunkered down in gaps and playing the run heavy. And I think that you're wasting downs if you start trying to go big at the 5, unless you're just flat better than the people you're playing. Another question here, it says, you talked about goal line and red zone too. When would you add them into 2 practice game week? Definitely in that second practice. I would practice my red zone and then just take it all the way down to the goal line and just make it a continuous, start at the 20, then go to the 15, then the 10, then the 5, and then move it to the 3, practice your plays, and spend a fairly significant amount of time that second day of practice with your goal line and red zone, for sure. And I don't know how many of you are taking into account a walkthrough for your practices, but I definitely think a walkthrough before the game is very good idea. And when I do a walkthrough, I like to start out, what are my coming out plays, and just walk the team. Even if you just walk the field, or your offensive coordinator just walk the field with his team, if he had his offense around him, and you start the ball at the -1, and whatever your call is going to be, your top 2 or 3 calls, you let your team know, hey, this is what, if we get the ball back here, this is what's getting ready to happen. Okay, it's third down backed up now. What calls can you expect? And then you just move the ball down the field. Okay, you get into the red zone. What are your calls in the red zone? What are your, do you have a special pass or two because of their coverage in the red zone that you practice, and review those. But I think a very profitable way for your team where you're not killing them is to have a walkthrough before the game, and we always walk through the day before. You may not be able to do that. You might could just be able to talk about it in a meeting, before you play. Next question I got is, how long would you consider to have a different phase? We have about a 70-minute for team scaly periods and game weeks. What I would do, if 70 minutes is your magic time, I would probably take about 15 minutes for individual periods where you're split up with your individual groups, practice, the backs and quarterbacks practicing handoffs, then quarterbacks and receivers practicing their throws against air. Then I would come together for about a 15 to 20 minute scale, depending, on how many bodies you have. And then I would take the rest of that for a team period. And if I'm going to, I typically wouldn't like probably much more than 30 to 40 minutes of actual team time, 11 on 11. If you had any extra time in that 70 minutes, I might add whatever time I had left to go back to my individual period where you can hit your fundamentals, both offense and defense. So some very good questions. The next thing that I think that guys overlook is we always were good 2-minute teams. And the reason we were good 2-minute offense teams is because we practiced those situations. 2 minutes in college or high school, when the clock stops after an incomplete pass, is a lifetime. 2 minutes is a lifetime to play if you have a good plan. 2 minutes, a minute and a half is a lifetime to play if you have a good plan. And we can talk about what constitutes a good plan for 2 minute, but if you've got a preconceived plan on what you're going to do, what formations you're going to get in, if you're just going to use one formation, when the clock stops, and you can go back and call anything you want to call. But I never got panic in 2 minutes because an incomplete pass stops the clock, out of bounds stops the clock. So the really only thing that messes you up in a 2-minute situation is a sack. And then you need to start thinking about taking a timeout when you get sacked, because that's where your time starts really getting eaten up off the clock. But the situations I feel like you need to practice in 2 minute, you want to start out with a minute 30, all right, and practice minute 33 timeouts, minute 32 timeouts, minute 31 timeout, a minute 30 no timeouts. And you need to hit these situations the earlier in camp, the better off you'll be to start practicing these situations. And as a head coach, you tell your coordinators, hey, today at the end of practice, we're going to take 10 minutes and we're going to do 2 minutes. And the situation today is a minute 30, 3 timeouts. Give them a series. Let them catch their breath. A minute 30, 2 timeouts, and so on and so forth. But you want to go a minute 30 with 3, 2, 1, and 0 timeouts. You want to go 1 minute, 3, 2, 1, no timeouts left. Then you want to go 30 seconds, 3, 2, 1, no timeouts left. If you will hit those situations in practice as you're going through camp and during game week, your players will be able to respond in a game and not panic and not be worried, all right? And you can start that drive. That's a head coach's discretion, all right? You can start that drive anywhere on the field. You want to help your offense out, obviously you can start it closer to the 50. If you want to make it harder on the offense, you start it further back. Strictly the head coach's discretion, and as the head coach or coordinator, you need to make sure that all these time situations, you're also starting the ball in different areas of the field, because there's going to come a point in time when you have to go 80 yards to score. So, if you're really good on offense, you need to probably make it harder on those guys early, especially. If you're okay, maybe you start to 30, 35 to help them just a little bit. But that's just part of the whole concept of 2 minute is practicing, putting your team in those situations. And obviously there's some, if the ball ever goes outside the hash, you want to tell your runner, hey, get to the sideline, try to get out of bounds, because obviously time is more important than the down. And I told the quarterback all the time, hey, all you have to do is complete one pass in 2 minutes. All right. You can miss on first down, you can miss on second down, you can miss on third down, but all you got to do is complete one pass. So don't panic. Just relax. Be the man. Play with confidence. All you have to do is complete one pass. And as far as a general philosophy for concepts in 2 minutes, I believe in tight ends. And if we had good tight ends, I wanted a tight end on the field because that left me a threat if I ever wanted to stick a run in during a 2 minute drive, 2 minute drill. If you don't have a good tight end where he, that you play with, where he puts his hand on the ground, can block people and catch balls, then obviously you have to do more of a spread type, 4 wide look. But I like to have a tight end in the football game, and I like to be a 2-by-2 look with a tight end, on the line or off the line. But generally, I had better success in 2-by-2 than I did 3-by-1. But I always had one formation. Everybody knew the formation. Say it's first down, we complete a little short pass, and it's 2nd and 4. Everybody hustles, gets to their alignment that, the general agreed on alignment, and then, you call the play and you run the play. If the clock is stopped, now you've got the whole playbook at your discretion. But I like to be in one formation when the ball was inbounds and the clock was running. When the clock was stopped, you can call any pass or run in your playbook because you can theoretically huddle. All right. Next thing is you need about 5 passes is all you need, because remember, the clock is stopping, and it's stopping a lot. All right. If you get a first down, the clock's going to stop and move the chains. And generally speaking, a lot of times you can get a play signaled in if you signal. The ball goes out of bounds, the clock stops. So there's a lot of things that stop the clock. So you don't need a ton of plays. So I would pick, for me, I always liked 4 verticals, to be able to stretch the field. I wanted curl flat of some sort. I wanted, ways to be able to get the ball out of bounds, whether it was, a comeback or an out cut, or a back in the flat. But generally speaking, 4 or 5 throws that you feel good about, that you execute fairly well, where you can get the ball in the different areas of the field and have a chance to get the ball caught and get out of bounds. I think it's very smart to have a screen, and I think it's very smart to be able to have at least one run that you can call, because if they're not playing any type of run responsibility at all, a 2-minute drill, if they're standing straight up and just rushing and not paying any attention, you can hand the ball off, and that's sometimes a decent way to catch people off guard and get a big chunk in a run. But I, generally speaking, I would have about 5 passes, and one of those might be a screen. One of those would definitely be a run, and one of those would, have a way to get the clock stopped as well. So those are, generally speaking, for me, and we were always a pretty darn good 2-minute team, but less is more in 2 minutes because you have a lot longer to play than you think you do. So here's another situation you need to practice, all right? You've got the ball, and you're ahead. There's 4 minutes left to go in the football game, all right? You're ahead. You've got the ball. The other team is desperate. They've got to stop you. They've got to get the ball back to give themselves a chance to win. And this is called stall offense, S-T-A-L-L, stall offense. How are you going to get that 4 minutes off the clock? How are you going to do that as an offense? Are you going to stay in your base offense because that's what you execute and that's what you do? Are you going to try to get in a little bit more run-oriented, bigger personnel group to try to run as much clock off as possible from the clock, snap the ball with no more than 2 seconds left on the clock, try, get up slow, make the official take the ball from you to try to eat up as much clock as you can? You've got to practice your 4-minute offense. How are you going to play that? What pass are you going to go to if you have to throw the ball to get the first down? Or are you just going to say, the heck with it, I'm running it, and I'm going to punt and play defense? But you've got to talk about that as coaches. All these situations that we've talked about, you've got to talk about as coaches. What are your best throws to get to the sticks on third down? When we come out, how are we going to come out on, from the -1? Red zone. What is red zone? When do they break? When do they start playing their goal line coverage? Goal line. What yard line is goal line to you? Is it the 3 like it is for me, or maybe is it further down to the 2, or is it further out at the 4? What is goal line? What does that look like to you? What personnel are you using? And then obviously 2-minute that we talked about pretty extensively. But stall offense is huge, because there's going to come a point in time when you've got the lead, you've got the ball, they're desperate, they're desperate, they're going to sell out to stop the run, and what are you going to do? All right? And that's something that has to be practiced. Another thing that has to be practiced is last plays. You're behind, and you've got to score a touchdown. Well, you're on your -30-yard line. You're too far out to throw a Hail Mary. There's not very many quarterbacks in the world can get the ball, far enough on a Hail Mary. So what are you going to do? Do you have the play in where you catch a little curl route and you start throwing laterals to try to get, someone to be silly and not cover somebody, trying to lateral the ball and do all those kinds of things? But what are your last plays going to be? How close are you before you can actually throw the ball to the end zone in a Hail Mary situation? Those are things that you've got to talk about. And these are plays that you must know. That they must know your 2 or 3 last plays and where are they on the field. And you need to practice them. You need to certainly walk through them before you play the football game, because you never know when that situation is going to come up. Is there a last play? Yeah, you know what? Is there a favorite play as a last play for you? Yeah, you know what? If I'm at the 50-yard line or even the 40-yard line and I've got enough time to have 2 plays, I like to get it in a 3-by-1 set, bunch set, and run the 2 outside receivers off. And I like to take that 3rd inside receiver and bend him out at about 20 yards. And generally the zone is cleared out, and you can get a lot of times a cheap, longer, 15 to 20 to 30-yard play by clearing a zone out with the 2 outside guys and running deep out with the inside guy. It's generally a way to get a cheap, closer to now where I can get the ball to the 30 in order to where I can throw my Hail Mary ball in the end zone to give my team a chance to catch it and win the game. But usually that deep out cut by that inside receiver, he can catch the ball and get out of bounds. So all that gets down to how much time do you have left. I've never been a big fan of all the laterals. I've never seen them work hardly at all. A lot of, defensive practice those. Quite honestly, I'd almost as soon just throw a whole Hail Mary and take my chances if it is truly the last play. If I have 2 seconds left in the football game, just, throw one deep and try to see if I can get lucky, because I've never really had much luck with the whole catch lateral deal. Here's another situation. Bear defense. All right. What is a bear defense? All right. That is where they cover the center and both guards. All right, you've got the center covered, you got both guards covered, you got your tackles and tight ends covered, and then you got one or two linebackers in the box, where that is a very hard defense to run against. There's really only a couple of plays against that Bear defense that are really any good. And one of them is a speed option where you down block your line and you go take the quarterback and pitch off the end man. And then occasionally you can get an outside zone run against that Bear front. But that is a very hard defense to run the football. And as a staff, you need to talk about, what are our runs going to be against the Bear? Are we going to give our quarterback the chance to audible to get us into a good run against that front if they ever jump in that Bear front? So that's something you need to talk about as coaches. And then lastly, your check system. Because really, even though, I'm sure all of you, even in Germany, have seen Peyton Manning and all his gyrations and all his things that he did at the line of scrimmage, really, he wasn't trying to get his team into the perfect play. He was just trying to get his team out of a bad play. And so, like that Bear front or that Bear defense, if you've got a play call that is not good versus that Bear front, then you need to try to get yourself out of that bad play and give yourself a chance to get into a good play with your quarterback being able to check the play at the line of scrimmage. And so, what is your philosophy as a play caller? The best defenses or the best offenses that I've ever been around is we had check system for the quarterback where he actually, very rarely did I ever have a play called where I didn't have two plays called and let our quarterback get us into the best situation from a play call standpoint. For example, I would, when we were really good at Northern Illinois and some of the other places I've been, I would match our outside zone play or stretch play with, our inside zone with power. And if they had a 9 technique on the defensive end, meaning outside shoulder on the tight end, if he was outside shoulder of our tight end, our quarterback, it would be something like, 44 check 5. Well, 44 was our power, and we would try to run power to that 9 technique because all our tight end had to do was turn out on the defensive end, and we could double back on the 3, pull the guard for the linebacker, and have a good play. But I'm just something to get your thoughts together. Is sometimes maybe having 2 plays and letting him pick the best one. And it's very simple as an offensive coach. If you just have a live color is a way to do it. So if your live color is red this week, the quarterback, when he says red, then the next number he calls is the play you're running. There's a lot of ways to do that. And if you don't want to do all that, that's totally fine. If you're a team that goes fast and you're spread and you're just trying to beat the defense and you don't care what they're in, more power to you. But some of the best offenses that I've ever been on were times when we actually tried to get in to really good plays and we weren't necessarily worried about going fast. So it all depends on your offensive philosophy. Everything, it doesn't mean it's good, it doesn't mean it's bad, but it's just things for you to think about. And I have a question that says, how do you structure audibles? And so I'll give you an example. If you know what I'm talking about, when the numbering system for the defensive, for the defensive line, anytime you have an outside, a defensive end play on the outside shoulder of the tight end, that's a 9 technique. Anytime he's head up, he's a 6 technique. Anytime he's inside shoulder, he's a 7 technique. And I would tell our quarterback for that example that I gave a minute ago, say, hey, listen, quarterback, if that defensive end is in a 9 technique, I want to run power. All right. So I would pair something like, 44 check 8, meaning power check stretch. Quarterback, I don't want to run our stretch play to a 9 technique. All right. I do want to run it to a 7 technique to a defensive end's inside shoulder, but I don't want to run it to a 9 technique. So I would pair like 44 power check 8. Quarterback comes up, he gets a 9 technique, he's running power. He gets a 7 technique, boom, he knows he doesn't want to run power to that 9 technique, he wants to run stretch. So he would come up, he would say, in the huddle, he would say 44 check 8. All right, 44 check 8. And then he'd come up to the line, and he'd either say red 44 or he'd say red 8. And here we'd go. All right, quarterback, I really like running our inside zone away from the 9 technique. All right, so I would go 5, check, whatever. And you give the quarterback just one or two different little rules, which is simple for you and simple for him and simple for your team, not overdo it. And now you're getting into the best play possible. Hey, quarterback, you always have the option, if you see a bear front, to check this play. All right. I don't care what run we have. If they get into a bear front this time, hey, get us to our best play. He's been saying black or yellow or green all day. All of a sudden now he says red. Boom. The team knows the next thing out of his mouth is a play they're running. It's something that you have to practice and maybe not be worth your time, especially if you're in spread offense. If you're huddling up, it might be worth your time, but it takes work. You have to practice it every single day, and you have to practice it on the days that, on your first and second down days. So, and that, I got another question. How would you do a check system with only 2 practices, not meeting time, and maybe a quarterback who misses 1 practice in a game week? Is there a way to check with me? The coach makes audible. Yes. The coach would make the check. You'd put that in the hand of the coach. I always liked putting the game in the hand of the quarterback. I know a lot of guys and a lot of very good coaches now who do the checks for the quarterback. And I would do it, the coach doing the check in Germany, just because of practice time and not a lot of meeting time. I like having the quarterback do it, A, because he's standing right there looking at it, B, because he's more engaged, and C, he stays more in tune with what's happening the entire game. A quarterback can get a little bit lazy in the run game if his coach is having to do all his thinking for him. And I like for the quarterback to do that. I think it makes him better. But I also think that in Germany, based on what I'm reading right now, you don't have enough time to practice your checks necessarily, especially if your main guy is missing meeting time because he's not there and missing practice time. And good question. Do all the players know all the numbers of the plays, or do they have wrist bands? Well, I certainly would like for all the players to have all the numbers. I mean, they need to know not only what the number is, they need to know the concept of the play. If whatever my numbers are for inside zone, they need to understand that, it's inside zone. They need to understand outside zone. They need to understand the concept of power. Now that's a gap scheme and a pull scheme. They need to understand all those concepts, and they need to understand all those plays. And I don't think you're going to be near as good as you need to be if you're relying, a whole team is relying on wristbands. You know, they would be wristbands if that was your check system. You know, if they could look down and they knew what the coach was checking to, you can get by with that. But all the players, in my opinion, do need to know the numbers, and they also need to know the concepts of the play as well as the concepts of the protection. You know, what does this mean? What type of protection is this? The better your players know the scheme, the better they're able to execute, and obviously that's what you're looking for. And if I could just say one thing before we stop and take questions, I would be very cautious if I were you. I believe that less is more. I believe that it's better to execute less plays than to have a lot more plays, but you don't run them very well. All right. The best 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 plays that you got, I believe it's much better to practice them and be able to execute them than be able to practice a lot of stuff and not be able to execute, you know, very much anything very well. So I believe that if you've got 3 or 4 runs out of different formations and you've got, you know, 5 to 12 pass concepts out of different formations, then you've got enough to win a football game, especially when you throw in a couple of screens and things like that. 2 or 3 screens, a draw, things of that nature. I believe that you can, whatever you're doing well, you can camouflage that, you can hide that with different formations and movements. That's where you can get your advantage by, you know, doing a couple of different runs really, really well and doing them out of different formations and being multiple enough with your formations to be able to find on film what you can hurt them with, because they're not lining up as well to this particular formation, as they do another. So I believe that less is more. You make it look like a lot more with your formations and your motions and your movements. But really, the best football teams that I've ever been on, we ran inside, outside zone and power. And we ran those 3 plays well. And we just made them look a lot different with a lot of different formations, motions, shifts, movements. So I would highly encourage that if you're going to be multiple in your motion, in your formations and movements, and not in your plays. So all these situations that we've talked about are things that you need to talk about as coaches and things you need to get together on, and then have a plan once you go to practice. And then once you go to practice, your team may not be able to execute some of the things that you hope that they could execute. So then you've got to go back and talk as coaches and say, hey, what can we do? What do we do well? And really, that's the biggest piece of advice I could give all of you, in addition to, you know, executing 2 or 3 things really well and not having too much, is I would encourage you to play to your players' strengths. Just because you want to be a spread offensive coach doesn't mean that your players will be able to execute that. You may not have the right quarterback for that. You need to do what your players can do. And the number one factor for that is, what does my quarterback do well? All right. If he's not fast and he can't run very well and he doesn't have very great feet, but he throws the football extremely well, you don't need to be in the spread running zone read. You know, play to your quarterback's strengths. Number one, put in offensively what your quarterback can, you know, what does he do well? And the next thing, what do my offensive line, what do they do well? All right. You may have an offensive line that's not a great pass protection team. Well, find one simple pass protection that you can give your offensive line that they can execute. Maybe you just slide protect all day. You know, maybe I just slide to a gap and, you know, take anything in my gap. But as a coach, the best coaches coach to their players' strengths and do what their players do best. And that changes from year to year. Okay? You need to, just because you want to be a spread, you know, like everybody in the United States is doing right now, just because you want to be a spread team doesn't mean that you're going to be a spread team because your players can't execute that. Or just because you want to be in the I formation and run the football. Just because you want to do that, that may not be what your players do best. So those would be my two biggest pieces of advice as you go forward, is do what your players can do. Number one, your quarterback. Number two, your offensive line. And then two, less is more. Execute 2 or 3 things really well in the run game. Execute 5 to 12 things in the passing game really well, whatever that number might be. And then just camouflage what you're doing with formations, motions, and movements. And you should have a chance to have a good offense. Now, it's almost time to stop. I want to make sure that I thank every single one of you guys. It's always been a dream of mine to come to Germany. I'd love to come to Germany at some point in time. I know there's clinics in Germany, and I certainly would very much love to come over and clinic in Germany. And we could not only spend 1 hour together, we could spend all day or 2 days together doing nothing but talking football. And then I've got 2 or 3 questions real quick here. It said, you talked about different third down situations. Do you have a different play for third and short, third and medium, third and long? I do, but they changed every single year depending on what we were executing well and what our players executed. So you have to know your players. You have to know your situation that you're practicing, know what they can execute, and then but those plays are fluid from year to year based on what our team that year was able to do and execute. Do you have a favorite play in the red zone? Again, that goes back to what are you executing well that particular year? What do your players do well? I think if you can run the football in general, I think that if you can throw nakeds and boots off your best run in general, and I think that you have 2 or 3 3-step routes that you can execute in the red zone or execute, I believe automatically you're going to be good in the red zone. If I run the ball well, if I have a good play action off my best run, and I can throw 3-step, if I can do that, I believe you're automatically good in the red zone right now. You talked about running the power against the 9 technique. Do you block the 9 technique with the tight end, or do you kick him out with your fullback? I prefer to block him with the tight end. If my tight end is off the ball, then obviously you're going to kick him out. I prefer to do it that way. And I believe that if you're kicking him out, you've got to protect your inside and certainly not get beat to the inside. And lastly, I said, could you go a little deeper in the rules you give quarterbacks for making play decisions? I could, but I think we might have to do another clinic because we're out of time. I'd be glad to help. And like I mentioned earlier, I would love to come over there. I would love to bring I could bring an experienced defensive coordinator. Maybe we could all get together and talk football for a solid day or 2, as long as you promise to take me out to drink some German beer and see some good-looking German women.
Yeah, that sounds good, Coach. Very much for your talk. Um, are there any other questions? You can type them into the chat.
And again, thank all you guys. It's Jordan made this possible. It's always been a dream of mine, like I told him, to be able to come to Germany, and it's awesome to be able to talk football and help you guys get better spreading football in Germany. I think football is the best game in the world. I think it teaches boys how to be men. So it's the best game in the world for helping young guys grow up and teach them how to be a man. And a lot of guys anymore, it's hard to be a man in today's world because of all the things that are happening to us right now. So football's a great game, and I really appreciate you guys coaching over there in Germany. It's awesome.
Yeah, okay, Coach. Thank you very much. I think we all could take a lot of nuggets from your talk, and I know the 3 pages of notes down have a lot of situations. And for our team, I can say we don't do the 4-minute stuff. We didn't do this last year, and I think that's a great opportunity to put in for our players, and also the check system period. We don't do this either. So I think I got two very good points we can move into our practice. So
I would be more than happy to do another hour Zoom session anytime you like. Just give me some notice. And also, I can type this up, Jordan, and I can email this to you if you want to send this situation checklist out to all these guys so they can have it in their hand and have something to look at. I can do that.
Yeah, that would be a great idea. I can hand it out to the German coaches here. Everyone got my contact, so I will send it out to everyone who asked me, and we stay into contact, Coach. Thank you very much for your time.
Hey, listen, I really appreciate you, and I appreciate your friendship.
Yeah, Coach. Thank you very much.
Good to see old Fabian.
Yeah, I'm still here, coach.
Yeah, man. Were you dipping?
Huh? No.
Oh, I thought I saw you spitting.
No, I just turned off my my video and my audio.
Well, hey, it's good to see you. I appreciate all you guys listening. We're already I'm trying to get over there to come see all you guys. I hope we can make that happen.
Yeah, we hope that too, Coach.
All right. Well, hey, I've got a defensive coordinator who coached college at BCS level for 100 years, that Art Kaufman, who would love to come as well. He's excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Oh, awesome, Coach.
And if you can only afford one, bring me.
we will make that happen. And Coach, I will reach out to you maybe for another session. I think Coach Simon Wilkin has some questions left, so maybe we can do another one in the future. And thank you very much for your time. Take care. Thank you, Coach.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.